Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. This is DJ and I'll be your host for this week. I'm joined by Varun, all the way from Singapore. Varun, welcome to the show and how are you feeling after that draw?
Yeah, feeling good because it means we won the Border Gavaskar Trophy 2-1. I'm not feeling great because I think this is the first game out of all that went through the entire weekend, and I was like geared up and ready to watch. And I had the match on in the background throughout the 2 days, Saturday, Sunday, but I just couldn't get myself to watch it nonstop. It was just it was the most boring test match out of the four. I'm sure we're going to get into that as well.
Wow, we will get into it. But tell me one thing. Did you know that the last four Border Gavaskar trophies have ended 2-1 in India's favor?
I did not know that. I knew the last three, but that's very interesting. The last four. Wow, that's good.
Yeah,
And
because
I guess none of us
2017 we
predicted
won
that.
2-1. 2017 we
Yeah,
won
that's
2-1.
that's the one I forgot. The next two in Australia, I remember, were 2-1.
Yeah, both were
And this,
2-1,
of
and now
course.
it's 2-1 again. So we were pretty dumb to make that 4-0 prediction because clearly
I mean,
2-1 was the right way to
I
go.
feel like Mark Waugh, right? Doesn't he always say it's going to be 4-0 for Australia before every Australia series?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Marco and Glenn McGrath, they make these
Yeah.
predictions. But man, it was an interesting end to the series, and we'll get into all of that. And um, I mean, it sort of left you a little bit wanting for excitement and hoping for a bit of a result, but there were some positives to take away from it. But first of all, let's talk about the World Test Championship final, right? Because this is what it was all building up to, Varun. So India has qualified as the second place team for the World Test Championship final. So we haven't topped the table. Remember when we topped the table in 2019 in the World Cup, we lost that. We topped the table in the last World Test Championship final. We qualified as the number one team. We lost that. We are now going in as, I'd say, uh, an underdog or maybe a down underdog, because we're playing Australia. Um, so how are you feeling about India being back in the running for an ICC tournament? Can I just also add one stat to that? Since we've been running this podcast, which has now been 5 years, the senior India men's and women's team have not won a single ICC tournament. 5 years.
Why did you have to remind us? Like, we all knew that, right? Like, that don't we wake up every day thinking about that? I don't think you needed to remind us. But yeah, it it's a great thing that we've made the final. I am very happy that we did it in the tests as well, not just in limited overs, that we keep getting to semis and finals. So I'm very excited. 2 years in a row, I mean, whatever, two times in a row, arguably shows you the consistency of India's test performances, right? Because last time it was New Zealand, this time it was Australia. I am very pleased with that. I think the challenge for us is going to be a couple of things, right? It's going to be June 7th at the Oval. And why I said it like that is because, one, there's not enough time gap between the IPL and the test match. And the second is, it's in England, and typically, if you look at our last 3 to 4 years, we've just not done well in the first test overseas, and we've not done well in the first test overseas. And I think between getting the combination right, between the batting, that's, let's be honest, the batting is pretty weak at home on Indian pitches. So overseas in a one-off test against a pace attack in England, it's not going to be easy. So I think the better way to approach this World Test Championship final is to keep your hopes and expectations low. Be happy that we've reached the finals, and if something magical happens, then we celebrate. But otherwise, it's business as usual for Team India.
Wow. That I think I can summarize that as you're a little bit worried about our chances given the game starts 8 days after the IPL final. But at least Pujara will be in England. We won't have Bumrah. We won't have Pant. Um, so is it a fair assessment? And we'll do a full WTC final preview, right? Like just after the IPL final episode, we will obviously have a WTC final preview. But um, is it fair to say we go into that game as underdogs against the Australians with the likes of Cummings, Hazelwood? Remember, those guys didn't play this series, right? So, do we
Yeah,
go into the final as underdogs?
look, let me put it this way. I think I would rather face Australia than face England or New Zealand in those conditions,
Hmm.
because I feel like they can make the ball move a lot more. I think Australia is right up there. So it's not like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's going to be easier. I'm just saying I'm happier to play these Australian fast bowlers, not swing bowlers. But I do think we're the underdogs going in. That is my
Fair enough.
opinion. Yeah.
Fair enough. And we'll talk World Test Championship final more seriously. But what does this tell you about the importance of Test cricket in India? Is it our number one format, or are we? I think there was a lot of chatter about ODI cricket during the game itself. Um, are we, as a nation, dedicated to Test cricket? Do you find? Does it
I
capture the
think
imagination in India?
Yeah, it does, and I think we've got Virat Kohli to thank for that, right? In Australia and England, Test cricket is the pinnacle of cricket. Like people love their Test cricket; they come out in numbers to watch it, and I think the fact that Virat Kohli focused on it so kind of wholeheartedly in the last 4 to 5 years has brought that interest level back. We've said it many times on this podcast. We enjoy watching tests more than ODIs. It's a T20 and a test game for us, and both could, like, the formats could not be like more different from each other. And I think, yeah, I think India loves test cricket. I want to go out there and say India loves test cricket overseas a little bit more than they love test cricket at home, and that's full credit to Virat Kohli.
Was Sena, the
The
great
Sena.
Sena acronym, South Africa, England, New Zealand, and Australia. But okay, we are here to talk Border Gavaskar Trophy, man. So last week when we were here, we were talking about what this fourth Test match is likely to look like, and I thought we'd dance a bit of Garba at the Ahmedabad Stadium with Axar Patel doing his thing with the ball, with the straight ball taking another 18 wickets in the game. But Varun, let's talk through what happened in the game. Right, first of all, Australia won the toss,
Wait,
decided to
what
bat again.
before the toss,
Uh,
there was a
uh,
huge spectacle at the
do
stadium
you want
where,
to tell us what
I mean,
happened?
I didn't follow it that closely, but I saw
I was
pictures and
asleep when
stuff.
this happened,
Yeah,
thankfully. But
thank
anyway,
God you were. But these two prime ministers just came on in like chariots and were just going around the ground, and it was like Namo Namo, and it was great because Narendra Modi was presented a picture of Narendra Modi in the Narendra Modi Stadium to mark
that's
75 years with
super meta, man.
yeah, that was very meta. Like,
That's like Inception meta.
yeah, so it's like you didn't know what you were watching. But yeah, so that happened, and that created a lot of buzz, and there were all these rumors that Modi's going to commentate and stuff. And
What?
I was like, oh my god, I have to get up and watch this and stuff. But yeah, he left the ground after a while, so he didn't
And
commentate.
India probably had the worst half an hour of the series in that half an hour that the two prime ministers were watching. There
Yeah,
was a dropped catch, if I remember correctly, from Bharat. There were buys down the leg side. I think Shami started off with like a really wide.
yeah,
There was one that nearly hit Virat Kohli. It slipped. So the prime ministers must have been wondering, like, is this the quality of cricket these guys have been playing? But anyway, that's besides the point. They won the toss, which was also they were made to wait. I think they were tossing while the guys were going around. I don't know. I didn't watch it, as I said, but I heard that the captains were waiting to toss in the middle while the chariot was going
yeah.
around. Listen, man, I don't know what to make of it, but I'm sure there's been plenty written about it, and there's been plenty of chatter about it anyway. Australia win the toss, they bat first. Getting to the cricket, Travis Head and Usman Khwaja open the batting. Again, they put on like 60 odd runs. Man, let's just talk about Usman Khwaja, right? He didn't play the first two times he toured India, like 8 test matches, he carried drinks. You've watched the test documentary. What he was refused his visa, I think, while he was coming here originally, right? And I bet the Indian team would have been like, I hope they just kept that decision because man, that 180 that he scored, that was just grit, determination, class. It's probably his last test match in India.
Yeah,
And
funnily enough, Steve Smith's might be his last test man. Khwaja's last, I think this was his, like you said, first proper series in India where he played, and potentially the last. But Khwaja is like on the top of the list, man, for run scorers in the last year or so. He has just been creaming it, right? And especially in the subcontinent. I think yeah, he's just remember from the test, you kind of realize that he hit two back-to-back hundreds at Sydney, I think, in 2 innings, and then they couldn't drop him, and then they said Travis Head is the incumbent for the middle order, so you just go and open, and so he went to this mate David Warner to open, and he's just made that position his own, like phenomenal. I think the thing with Khwaja is when he gets going, it's a really big knock. I think that's what's defined his last 10 matches or so. It's like 100, or 10, 15 runs. There's doesn't feel like there's much in the middle.
Like Khaja mere Khaja pitch mein samaja. He
Pretty
literally looked like
much.
he was rooted in the pitch, man, at one point. And it was only a lapse of concentration that got him out in the end. But
I mean, he
the
played
other,
422 balls.
yeah, insane. And he didn't do anything funky. Like
Yeah.
in the previous test matches, you could see that he was sweeping, reverse sweeping. He didn't do much of that funky stuff in this game because I think they picked up pretty quickly that this was a normal pitch, right? That you could survive on it and you could make runs on it if you stayed in for a while. We'll talk about the pitch later, but I think hats off to Usman Khwaja for scoring those runs. The longest stay by an Australian in Indian conditions. Also, like I mean, it was hot and well played to him. But the other guy who got 100 in that innings was Cameron Green, right? Mostly known for being extremely tall, 1.98 meters tall, and a big IPL tag to come with that. I think he's gone to the Mumbai Indians, right?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Apart from that point, like he not got a test 100. He got I think 850s or something like that. Um, but there was a point at which on that first day they weren't going very quickly, and then they decided to just unleash at the end. And I think that was just awesome because he just picked up the scoring rate, which helped them end the day with a decentish, just above three scoring rate. So, what did you make of that innings by Cameron Green, man?
Dude, it was awesome. Okay, seriously. Like, I think even Ravichandran Ashwin came out and said players like him are once in a generation, once in an era kind of thing. Dude, I mean, there were some cover drives of his where he just leaned into it. And it was one of the best shots I've ever seen from that height with that like kind of movement forward, leaning into that cover drive. It was incredible. And here's a guy who, again, we're referencing the test documentary, just swept his way to runs in either, I think, Pakistan or Sri Lanka, one of the two. He just kept sweeping
With his long
till
stride.
yeah,
Yeah.
till he figured it out. And man, it's not easy batting here. You've seen what the first three matches were like. Apart from Khwaja, nobody else got going in this Australian lineup as well. So
Guys, yeah. Sorry, I just want to interrupt to say we've got our first ever YouTube super chat. I didn't know that this was a function we had turned on. But
what is
Balwinder
that?
Singh Chahal just sent us $5 Aussie, which is
Oh,
very cool. Says, I'm happy only for Kohli and Australia's favourite for the Test Championship final for me. And nice to see you guys, one of your old time listeners. We will address the Kohli point, but Balwinder, you are number one to give us a super chat. So, guys, clearly we have the function turned on. So, show me the money.
it's beer money, right, DJ?
Yeah, keep it coming. But sorry, a cracking innings, man. But I thought he hit the ball really hard, and he only got out when he was really unlucky by Ashwin. Like Ashwin, he edged one down the leg side. Um, but let's also talk about Ashwin on that track, right? Where over 5 days, Varun, 5 days, there were only 22 wickets that fell, and of which Ashwin took the out of the 12 Australian wickets to fall, Ashwin's taken 7.
Yeah.
Now, there's another question around this, and this has come up earlier. What is our 11 going to be, right? And randomly systematic has asked the question: what would India's 11 be? Will Ravi Ashwin play? Now, for someone who's contributed so much to getting them to the World Test Championship final, and showing that class, and the only reason that they scored below 500 was because of that 6 for 91 by Ashanna. I mean, how classy is he as a bowler and as a social media creator and influencer, because we have to talk about his social media chatter also.
Yeah, we'll talk about that after this. But I think the 6 wickets he took in that first innings were phenomenal. Harsha Bhogle also tweeted about it and said, "This it's like it's bowling on another level, right? Like the determination you need to come back in after Australia has gotten stuck in, after you're tired. I mean, for God's sakes, they played like almost 170 overs, and he picked up those wickets towards the end. This is at the end of like 150, 160 overs. Ashwin has come on and taken all of these wickets. It is full credit to him. And he showed his class, man. He really showed his class. Now, coming to the question that is on everyone's mind, what is that team going to be in England for the World Test Championship? Look, let's be realistic. He did not play in the last England series, if I remember, right? He was sitting out.
Yeah,
And
sat out for
Kohli
all
decided,
5 tests.
yeah, and Kohli decided to go for four pacer strategy, which worked. Okay, he then played the World Test Championship
No, he'd
final.
already played that before, because I was before the England test. He played the World
No,
Test
that was the
Championship final.
one-off
Then,
test, right?
yeah, no. So the sequence is World Test Championship final. We played two spinners, Ashwin and Jadeja. We
Okay,
then played the England
okay,
tour,
then got it,
and
got
then
it.
and then
So
even the one-off test he didn't play. He was not
got
part
it.
of that.
So the chronology is a little reversed, but they were close enough together. So
Chronology
basically,
समझिए.
so basically, that World Test Championship final where he played, I think it was a complete waste, and uh, we lost by 8 wickets or so, if I'm not mistaken. I think a lot of us
Deleted.
were.
I don't remember because I delete all this
I mean, I
bad
remember
stuff.
Kane and Ross batting, which is why I assume they were
Yeah,
two down.
it
That's
was
the
two
two or
down.
three down.
Yeah.
Um,
And Ashwin took those 2 wickets, I think. Funnily enough.
I don't know, because the flip side is you don't drop Jadeja, right? So if you have to drop somebody, you do it. Now the interesting thing is India was so confident before the third test at Delhi that Rohit had already started talking about producing a seaming track for Ahmedabad, getting the guys ready. Shardul Thakur will come into the mix, and so India thought they're going to win this 4-0. India thought in the fourth test they're going to get a Thakur back and start thinking about that bowling.
वो edges and
The
sledges सुनते हैं यार सब predict कर
Yeah,
रहे हैं 4-0 4-0
yeah,
good one.
and so they thought Shardul would be back into the equation. So it's not going to be easy. We'll just have to wait and see. He will be in England. Will he take the field? I am not sure.
No. Okay. And then obviously while we're on the topic of, since we've gone back to the World Test Championship final, now that Gill has hit a century, can we have KL back? Let's talk about Shubman Gill, the man that I wanted to play from the first test match in the series. In the preview we did with Jared, I said he scored a double hundred. He scored India's highest T20 score. He's just reeling the runs off. Fine, he failed in that Indore test, but who didn't, man? Like we were bowled out for 109, so that was not the right um, barometer. But man, if you ever needed a young man to show his class and step up, and I like to call Shubman the prince, because if Kohli is the king,
Okay.
it's like Sachin is God, Kohli is the king, and Shubman is the prince. And damn, man, some of those shots were like princely. There was there was one like shot through mid wicket with a straight bat that he played, which like I think any cricket fan just would just like die to watch that shot over and over again. It was just incredible. A short arm jab through mid wicket for four, just beautiful. And then that cover drive that he's got is, I mean, poetry, man. When he bats, it's so good.
Yeah, it was excellent, man. Like I don't have the same passion for him that you do, but I mean, I think there is no doubt
Think he has some
that
talent.
yeah, I know. I think he's got talent. I think he should play all formats. I think he's here to stay for the long run. I can't describe him the way you describe him, but yes, man, he is so
Yeah,
good, and I think
there's a
this is
bit of
his.
a man crush thing happening there with his batting, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can see
the
that. Like
long sleeves,
I
just
just wanted
oof.
to like sit back and let you let you complete your sentence before I jumped in. But yeah, he's done really well, man. I think if I'm not mistaken, fifth century in this year, calendar year, and we're not even done with the quarter. So it is incredible, and that's the thing when people are in this kind of golden purple patch or whatever you call it, you make them play. I can see a question from randomly systematic. DJ, I think the question is for you. Are you happy with Gill opening long term, or do you think he could be a better player in the middle order as a replacement for the king? Because ultimately,
Yeah,
a prince
I
does
mean,
have to
he's
become the king.
exactly, and I agree. I mean, I think I've said this before. I think his game is better suited to being in the middle order. His footwork, he stays leg side of the ball. There was a little bit of Sehwag that I was reminded of, and I was watching highlights of some random 2013 game of Sehwag hitting Mumbai Indians everywhere, and there was a little bit of Gill there because they both stay leg side of the ball and they hit in like unusual places. And um, I think if once Kohli's retired, and hopefully that's not going to be another 4, 5 years, 6 years. Um, he's only 34, right? Sachin played till 40. I think Gill would take that spot because you'd want to protect him to give him the chance to score better, to protect him a little bit from the new ball, right? So, in red ball cricket, I'd say yes, and I think I've said that before as well. His celebration as well has also come up. He does a little bow, which was just it's really nice to see. Kohli's celebrations as a younger man was slightly different, a bit more colorful. And this was Shubman Gill's first Test 100 at home. So just a great knock. One of the things I truly enjoyed was on the at the end of day two. I think we only had to bat 10 overs, and he'd got out hoiking a horrible shot. Right in the first in the first test he played, the third test match at Indore, he got out across the line hoiking it, and he comes down and smacks Nathan Lyon straight down the ground for six, saying, I don't care if it's the last over of the day, I'll still hit you for six. And that's kind of like we miss Pant in this team, but there's a little bit of that young brash.
And
Um,
I don't know if we've seen that. Can't remember what it's called. The Down Under series, right, where it was all about that GABA test and the format series. And actually, there was a part that they talked about that Pant and Gill were like near the water cooler the night before day five, saying, "Bhai, ye karna hai, ye to karna hi hai. Like we have to win it." Like there was no like Rahane and Rohit might tell us to play safe, or Ravi Bhai might say this. They were just like, we have to do it. And they knew that I will start and you have to finish. Like it is going to be in that order. We can't reverse that. And yeah, you're right. That's the feels you get when you talk of a Gill and a Pant. Like guys who want to go for the win, guys who are not going to change the way they play, and guys who are new enough to not care, and just take on the bowler, do reverse sweeps
yeah,
across
there was
Jimmy
a reverse.
Anderson and Gill doing it as well. So yeah, man, it's just great.
Yeah, and he's only 23. And I think Ravi Shastri was on comms and said that he was great friends with Pant, as you said, the water cooler chat and all of that. But of course, he was joined. Pujara came in, scored 40 odd. And then he was joined by the King, who looked all at sea to start off with, right? And like the first four balls he played just before, I think it was tea or lunch on day three, he looked like he was uncomfortable. But once that little phase passed, I think we have to acknowledge that okay, it's been 3 years to over 1,200 days since Kohli scored a Test match 100, right? So first they came for his T20 form, like whatever. He then scored a T20 100. He scored that 80 odd in Australia against Pakistan at the MCG. He scored more runs in the rest of the tournament. He scored 50s, etc. So that, but he hasn't got a ODI 100. He's like, okay, yeah, you can have two more ODI 100s, or it was three, I don't know. Um, and then, but they were like, but you still haven't got a Test 100. So it's been 3 years since you got a Test 100. But obviously, like, no one cares about COVID, none of that. They would like for, I don't know how many, 8, 9 months, they didn't play cricket, Test cricket. And so there's like, oh, but your Test form is not great. And like he's averaged 25, but then we've had like pitches like the Indore pitch that he's batted on, Nagpur, Delhi. They're not easy pitches to bat on. Who's got 100 in the first three Test match? Only Rohit got one, right? And so I think we talk about his innings of self denial. Like you think of Sachin 241, right? At Sydney. He didn't hit a cover drive. Was this Kohli's equivalent of that Sydney innings by Sachin, where he's just denied himself because he didn't hit against the turn even once?
Yeah. I think it is, I think there are a couple of things here. One, I think he he spent the 2 days out there watching Australia bat, and I think he assessed that pitch to realize that if he has to score one, this is probably the best chance in the near future, maybe, but probably in 2023. So I think he kind of just, if I was him, I would have been very determined that I'm going to get the 100 today. The second thing is the match situation was such that if Kohli didn't get that 100, we were on the back foot, right? So yes, Gill set it up well, but they made almost 500 runs. So even with Gill's century, we were still a long way to go. Akshar Patel did well because Kohli was at the other end. But I think Kohli just decided to get stuck in for the team more than the 100. And I think the combination of the two, the determination to get 100, but also playing for the team, it just resulted in a beautiful innings.
And those two fours to get to 150 of Cam Green, one he smashes through the covers, comes on the track, and then just clips the next one, which is on off stump through mid wicket. Just class. And 186, it ends in disaster because he's trying to accelerate the scoring. But we have an interesting question from Bharat Ramachandran, right? How long a rope will Kohli get now that he's got his 100? To be honest, do we really think he warranted a place in this side considering his awful form in tests? And he follows that up with, if KL had to be dropped, shouldn't it be the same for Virat as well? I'm going to let you answer those two questions before I chip in.
I mean, I can't claim to remember the stats of Virat and KL over the last couple of years, but I think if you look at the way Virat has batted, he has, yes, he has gotten out and his average is not great, but he has at least looked in control a lot more than a KL. And I can't believe I'm answering the question of KL versus Virat, but okay, let's address that question. The second thing is DJ answered it earlier, man. How long of a rope does he have? He's 34. Sachin retired at 40. He's arguably fitter than Sachin. So I think, yeah, I think he's got a long rope, man. I don't see a ready replacement, right? Would love to hear from you guys who are listening in as well. Like, who's the replacement? Is it Shreyas Iyer? Is it Surya Kumar Yadav? Is it Kishan? Like, you have to look at your squad, right? These are the people in your squad. So, who is your replacement? I don't think you have one.
So for me, I find it fascinating that we question Kohli after he's just scored 186. There's nothing he can do, right? It's a completely false equivalence. How are you equating a KL Rahul who averages 34 in Test cricket? Forget averages 34. He opens the batting. He's done well in England. He had a decent series, but ever since then, he's just looked like he's already been dropped once from this team. The body of work that's gone behind Kohli as a Test cricketer, KL doesn't have that. He doesn't have series in which he has 500 plus runs like Kohli had in Australia. He just doesn't have those. He hasn't churned out the runs with that consistency, and therefore this is a man. Let's just put this in context again. There's a stat that showed up. Sachin has 100 international hundreds. Kohli has 75. After that comes Ricky Ponting with 71. Then below that is Kumar Sangakkara with 60 odd, and Jacques Callis with 60 odd. That is the class and caliber of person you are talking of when you're comparing him to a KL Rahul, who's a very talented player. But the body of work that's gone behind that 7,500, his average is dropped from 50 plus to below 40, below 50, just below 50 in Test cricket after a horrific few years. And he's admitted he has struggled mentally. He's wondered when the runs will come. But surely this is the second coming of King Kohli, right? You've seen him starting to score runs again. And um, I find it very odd that we compare a KL who's like the other side of 30 to a Kohli who's who's got a legitimate claim to being one of India's all-time greatest batsmen across all three formats. So I just find it absolutely fascinating that we're still, after the year we had in 2022 where we discuss this every day almost, we're still talking about whether Kohli should be getting a longer rope in this team.
Yeah, I think it's anyway. Yeah, I think you've said enough. I don't think Kohli is going anywhere. I think if you want to debate it in the next year or so, it'll probably be in T20. But otherwise, I don't think there's any debate.
I think we should just be happy and enjoy this. Because I think we were privileged to watch a master at work where he just bloody mindedly went about his work, and it was fascinating. But okay, we've talked about the Kohli 186. At this point, India is leading by 90 odd runs, right? We'll take a quick break and then we'll come back and discuss the Ahmedabad pitch. Welcome back from that break, and you're still listening to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Varun, we've just been discussing the first innings, which went on for 30 minutes because the two first innings went on for 4 days out of the five, right? Um, so we left where India lead by about 90 runs. The scenario is that if the test match is drawn, but there's another test match ongoing in New Zealand, where Sri Lanka are playing New Zealand, right? And Indian fans have been keeping an eye on this test match, including myself. But like, keep one eye on what's going on, because if Sri Lanka win both those test matches, unlikely though it may seem, and India draw this test match, which seemed pretty likely at that point, Sri Lanka would be making that June 7 final. And so Sri Lanka do well. They score 350 plus in the first innings. They have New Zealand 7 down for they at one point looking to take quite a sizable lead. And then I think Matt Henry smashes like a 70, and New Zealand end up with an 18-run lead. And then Angelo Matthews scores another 100, and they set on day 5 285 runs. I think it's 285. I should probably check that score. Yeah, it's 285 is the target for Australia, for New Zealand to win. And at the end of day 4 in New Zealand, they're 28 for 1. We're checking Christchurch weather. It's raining. They lose a session to rain. And at that point, Indian fans are like, "Chalo, we'll make it if this is a drawn test match because of weather." But then I wake up this morning, right, and it's like the test match is underway, and it's not only underway. New Zealand are close to winning. There's 5 wickets down, but they're running out of time. And Australia and then Sri Lanka hit back with 3 wickets. Kane Williamson is batting, and it in one of the most dramatic ways of ending a test match, Varun. I think I just breathed the sigh of relief when there were 2 balls left and 3 wickets to take. Sorry, there were more balls than wickets left at one point.
Yeah, to
Um,
be honest, the thing is it's during the workday for me, right? So I kept remembering there is this match going on, but like every hour I would forget, and suddenly I'd remember there's a match, and I'd keep checking it to the point where somebody messaged me saying 8 of 6 needed, and I was like, okay, what match are you talking about, right? Like which T20 match are you referring to? Which 8 of 6? Now I should have guessed it's New Zealand in Test cricket because New Zealand loves taking things to the last ball, last over,
the
and
barest of margins.
the barest of margins. And then I started looking at the score, and I was genuinely tense. Now, before we talk about that last run, can you imagine if, like, I don't know how to schedule this right in the future, but can you imagine if Sri Lanka was 1-0 up?
Oh
This was the
man,
second test match.
we would be having
Day
a very
5,
different
yeah,
conversation right now.
day 5 of India versus Australia and day 5 of Sri Lanka versus New Zealand happening on the 13th of March.
Oh, like the
I
end of
mean,
the football season where you're playing in
oh my
parallel.
God. I think that would have been incredible if they were 1-0 up. But
Yeah,
either way, thank you to Kane Williamson
yeah.
because I mean, he hit 121. He was just on fire. Even though he missed the last ball, it was a bye. Neil Wagner was running on the other end, who had
With
been
a
declared
torn hamstring,
unfit
torn
to
hamstring,
play on day
diving,
4.
bulging disc in his back,
And
bionic man,
it's not
unbelievable.
like if New Zealand won, they make the WTC final. I mean, it makes me question Shreyas Iyer's lower back scans as well. Watching
Wo
Neil
bhi
Wagner
in the middle of the
dive.
game. What
Yeah,
was he making
I
some reel?
must have been. He has
Have you
to have
seen his
been making a
Lahari
reel.
Babu Dil
Oh my God, that's
with
horrible.
Rohit and all? It's
And
too.
Shardul. It's horrible. That reel is horrible. I can't finish watching it.
But
It's
you
like it's
can't
a
stop
20
watching
second.
it also.
I watched like 15 seconds, but I can't finish it because it's so horrible. Anyway,
It's
but
the turn on the reel. When
it
Rohit
sounds
does the
like
turn.
it's horrible. It's ridiculous. Anyway, yeah. So Kane Williamson scrambles through. Not only does the keeper miss, the bowler hits it direct. They go to the third umpire, and he's just safe. And at that
Oh,
moment, apparently India walked off the field or walked back on the field after lunch, and Kohli was shaking hands with everyone, saying, "Well done, well done, well done." To reach the final, like yeah, that's what was happening. Like that's what
yeah.
today was for me. It was just watching this bizarre, like
It,
um, yeah,
it was
scene
it
set
was
of
it
events.
was yeah, it was pretty bizarre. But we also have a rather random question from Tilak, which says, "Is this live pre-recorded?" I don't know what
Is
that
this
means.
live pre-recorded or is this
Is this
live pre?
live pre-recorded? No, we're recording this live. As I've
Yeah,
just taken your comment, which I could not have done if
if
this
this
was
was pre-recorded.
pre-recorded. Hence proved, sir. Um,
Yes.
sorry, where were we? So day 5. This is what happens. This is at they walk out back after lunch, and basically everyone has. I mean, really, everybody lost a little bit of interest, right? At that point, tell the truth.
Yeah, I couldn't watch it to be honest. I was just following it every 30 minutes on
And you
CricBuzz.
know
I could.
how we know that they lost interest? Because Shubman Gill and Cheteshwar Pujara were bowling by the end of that test match, which made it a bit of a mockery, right?
Yeah, it did, and both bowled pretty well, man.
Yeah, but
Like
that's what
one
Ashwin
run.
asked, na? He Ashwin
Yeah.
on Twitter asked, "मैं क्या करूँ? Job छोड़ दूँ?"
Yeah, to which Pujara had a nice reply saying, "This was thank you for coming one down in Nagpur." So that was fun. But yeah, man, I mean, I don't know what they were doing bowling, but it's just they just kind of decided. So what happened actually, DJ, in the when Shubman was given his second over, the Australians just were
They
like,
were
"This is
just like,
enough. We
"This
we
is
can't do this.
nonsense."
We've like we're going to spend 7 months in India. This from the start of this year. We've not come here to play Shubman Gill's bowling. Right? That's
It's
pretty much
40
what happened.
degrees. Shubman Gill is coming into bowl. He's even worse than that lookalike that we'd hired to copy Ashwin.
Yeah.
And like they
I
were
think
just like, "It's time to go
Lavish
home."
Smith are just like, I'm done. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, it was poor. I mean, you're not going to. There's nothing to gain there, na? It's like that Alistair Cook getting Ishant Sharma out and averaging 7 in Test cricket. Like if Pujara or Gill had taken a wicket and they never bowl again, they'll be like, "Yeah, my average is 2 in Test cricket." And who do I get
Yeah.
out? Steve Smith or
Yeah.
something like that. But interesting that neither Labuschagne nor Smith scored 100 this series. Huh? The guys that we
Yeah, and they
thought
both
would do.
looked like they were getting set, and they.
Yeah.
I thought one of them would score bigger,
So I'm going to ask you some
but
questions now. Who is the top
oh God,
scorer across the teams in terms of runs? And no checking cricket info.
no, I'm not checking.
You're live.
Okay,
This is not a
I get
pre-recorded live. You
I
get
get two
one.
options.
You get one.
I'm gonna say Khawaja.
Yeah, 333
Okay,
runs. Pretty good.
yeah, but
Highest
yeah, my
highest scorer for
next
India.
was Axar Patel.
Incorrect.
Oh man, Kohli.
King Kohli, 297,
Yeah.
of which
So
186 came in the last
so
innings.
basically, both Khwaja and Kohli hit like 50% of their runs in one innings, which
Yeah, but
is
also Kohli didn't bat in 2 innings in the series.
neither did Akshar, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and Akshar was not out. So who's got highest average in the series
Akshar
with the bat?
Patel.
With
Yeah,
the bat,
Akshar Patel.
Akshar
Akshar
Patel.
Patel took like one wicket in this whole series or some
Akshar put
ridiculous
three
stat
wickets.
like
Three
that.
wickets. No, he took 3 wickets. There is one Indian bowler that played 3 Test matches and took 1 wicket. Come on, tell me.
Uh, played three test matches. Umesh? No.
No, Umesh took 3 wickets. He took 3 wickets in Indore only in that one innings. But 3 Test
So,
matches.
Siraj.
Siraj, highest average 70 plus.
So
Highest wicket
Siraj
taker.
must have been like, I'm not doing like this is total like zero return on investment for him, right? He's like three test matches coming in to bowl in the heat, and he's picked up
Yeah.
one wicket. Poor
Yeah.
guy.
So who was the highest wicket taker for both sides across both teams? And don't say you need
I'll
two
say
shots here because there are literally only two choices that you will have.
I'll say
And
Ashwin.
yeah, 25 wickets. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. I mean, that's not unpredictable in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean the fact that I was thinking between Jadeja, Nathan Lyon, and Ashwin, is means that I think they were like 22, 23, 25, something like that.
Okay.
So it was pretty close, but
Yeah.
I think Ashwin six wicket haul just changed the game.
Just too classy, man. I mean, did you agree that Kohli should have been man of the match, though? Player of the match? Controversial. Vinesh Bhatt has asked a question on this, actually, so I'm going to put that on screen.
Kohli should have been, man. Why shouldn't he? He scored the highest number of runs across both teams. So yeah, I got my justification. Yes, Kohli should have been man of the match.
And Khaja got 180, so should have worked a bit harder. This is like the Dhoni Gambhir argument, right? Like,
I
yeah,
mean,
you only got
Khwaja
97, you didn't get 100.
actually,
It was in
and
your
Khwaja
mind.
didn't bat the second time as well.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Kohli just had nicer shots, right? That's why he got man of the match. I think that's how we leave it.
Okay. I mean, it's hard now in a drawn match, which we're not used to anymore. But there's always one
Yeah,
drawn test match in Border Gavaskar Trophy.
there is always one, and it always starts with like big wins, not like oh they played
Yeah.
well and they won. It's like
Okay.
big wins, and then you suddenly the whole thing kind of slows down.
Yeah, so
With
let's
the
let's look back at the series a little bit, right? So I think we've talked about the test match ended in a draw. It ended well for Indian fans. If Sri Lanka had won in New Zealand, we would be having a very different conversation right now. But let's
I mean
talk
the
about
can you imagine the TRP of the second test match
of the
Sri
second test
Lanka New
match.
Zealand?
Yeah.
It would have been
No,
insane.
no, no,
Anyway,
tell me about the pitch. We said we'll talk about the pitch. We haven't talked about the pitch. I thought we'll have a spinning track. We've laid out one of those like roads that the Australians played on in Pakistan, which I think we should have done for the third test match, to be honest, after Australia were already mentally gone. But
yeah,
we let
kill
them
them
back
in the
in and then we
field.
did this. Yeah. So what did you make of that track?
I think it was. I think there was a lot of confusion because I think you originally went with I want a seaming wicket to prepare for the finals. Then you lost the Delhi test and you realized that with three spinners, and by the way, Dravid said this as well, right? That when opposing teams come to India, the second spinner is where we make all our runs. He said in this case,
Yeah.
this spin trio is the best to have come to India since Graham Swan's time, right?
And Panesar.
And
Wow.
yeah, and
2012,
Panesar.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think we talked about this on the show 2-3 episodes ago. The bowlers the bowlers who are taking wickets are the ones who are just getting that slight movement, right? The spinners. It's not the rank turn and kind of deliveries that pick up wickets.
Hmm.
And I think Australia figured that out really well. So I think India was basically stuck in this dilemma now where forget the seaming track, right? Because we don't have the time to play a Shardul and get him match practice here. You create a spinning track, they've kind of come prepared and they've beaten us in the last test.
Hmm.
And those subtle variations are working for them like they're working for us. And so I think you went down the kind of the easiest road, right? Which is the odds of Sri Lanka winning 2-0 are low. We need a draw under any circumstances
Hmm.
to retain,
But
or
2-2
not to
would have
retain,
also
to
left
win.
you. 2-2 would have
Yeah,
also
so I
left
think
you with
correct, and that's what I'm
the one
saying. I
test
think
match win.
the I think, and which is why I'm saying I think what happened is you realize that Sri Lanka 2-0 is tough, but you also wanted to win this Border Gavaskar Trophy 2-1 rather than
Hmm.
leave it 2-2. And I think
Okay.
if man, I don't know if this is how it actually works, but
It was a
from an
tame end to
outsider,
the series, though, right?
it was a
It
very tame
felt
end.
like it was a very bad way to end a pretty exciting series so far.
Yeah,
Like we should
it
carry
was
over
it
the
was
leftover days from the other test matches and add them to this test match.
yeah.
And still
I,
you
I
may
I
not have a
agree,
result.
and this is what I've been saying for a while. I've been really excited to watch it on the weekend, and this was the only match that I watched on Saturday and Sunday. Some of the other tests didn't even reach Saturday morning.
Yeah. And luckily you got to see King
So
Kohli
yeah,
just
I did, and
grind
that
the
was
Aussies
fantastic.
into the
That
ground.
was fantastic, but still, it was the most boring match out of all. So, bit of a kind of timid end to the series, but hey, we won and we made the WTC final. So, if you look at it overall, it's a pretty good situation.
But it doesn't go to the way we prepare pitches. It's not that we could have prepared a good track in between the complete turner and flat batting track, but we didn't want to go down that way. You think we said we're just going to play it safe?
Yeah, I think so, man. I can't think of any other reason why
Mm.
this happened. I think we realized that there is when you create a pitch that's going to create that kind of variability, I think the result could also go either way.
I'm actually okay with that. I don't mind having a couple of drawn
I'm
test
fine.
matches in a format series. Why not?
Yeah, I'm okay. Maybe
And
it
you
was a
just have
combination of it
one
being the
Bunsen in the middle
last.
of that.
I don't know. It it is clearly more fun to watch
Wickets.
wickets fall than runs being hit. I think I'm trying to think of the
If
best way
we
to
want
say this,
runs, we'll
but
go to the IPL.
yeah, exactly. I think that's the best way I can summarize this. It is more fun to watch wickets than
Yeah,
runs.
it's interesting that we didn't even talk about the four sixes that Akshar clouted. Instead, we are
Yeah,
harping on about the Kohli grind, the
yeah,
Ashwin deception for 6 wickets. So it's very interesting, right? It's very interesting. But
yeah.
I think it wasn't, as someone said in the comment, it wasn't a hard fought draw like the Sydney draw. That was like a that was
I
dramatic.
mean, this game ended because Shubman Gill was given a second over, right? Like Rohit Sharma thought, how can I get these guys
How
to
do I get them
stop
off the
playing?
field?
Yeah, how do I get them to stop playing? If I keep bowling Ashwin and Jadeja, they're going to take it as practice for future tours. So he's just like handed Shubman the ball. Shubman's bowled one delivery and Labuschagne and Smith have called it off. They're like, can't deal with this shit, right? They're like, no run, no ball, no nothing. Like they just called it
Nothing.
off 78.1 overs.
Yeah.
Shubman Bill, I'm saying Shubman Gill bowled 1.1 overs and the game was called off.
Awesome. But did you also feel that this was too friendly
Yeah,
Border
it
Gavaskar
was. I
trophy?
was going to say that this is
No?
the most friendly Border Gavaskar trophy that I've ever seen in my life.
Why? There was no controversy at all.
I mean, the controversy
No
was like
fights.
Virat Kohli telling, basically, Virat Kohli needed to get
Yeah.
after someone. So he got after Nitin Menon. He's like,
It's like if
"Agar
I
main
was batting,
deta."
you would have given me a...
Did he say that? Or he
Oh,
said,
oh,
he said, if I was umpiring, I would have given that out.
is that what he said? I thought if I
I,
was batting, you would have given me out. It's
but
for
that's
that.
more fun. That's more fun than saying, Agar
No,
main
maybe
hota to
I'm
main
making
out
that
did.
up. Maybe I'm making
Yeah.
that up. Yeah,
But
too
either way,
funny.
it's just yeah. So the only sledging that happened was Virat Kohli to Nitin Menon like a few times. Other than that, like Kohli and Lyon were like best buds. You saw Stark and Kohli chatting, and you're just like, what
Yeah.
is going
I'm
on?
like, what happened to the Ashwin? Like, he's
Yeah,
pointing to his head and all. Where's all that gone?
it was too nice. It was just too nice.
At one point, when Akshar and Kohli were batting, I was like, it would be awesome if someone tried a non-striker run out. Because at one point, that's the only way they looked like they were going to get a wicket. It was pretty
Yeah,
shocking. But okay, Varun, we done a moment where um, we thought it was a turning point of a match. For you, what was the turning point of this series? Just think back to the four test matches and tell me where this series was won by India and where it was lost by Australia. And I have a very clear point of view on when that happened. But I'd be interested to hear when you think that went down.
man. You
This
know
is
my
not a
memories.
test.
Yeah, I mean, there's for me, it's. I'm just trying to think. Like maybe you can help me here. For me, it's the return of Jaddu. Like that was a
Yeah,
huge thing
yeah.
for me. I think Axar Patel batting was a huge thing
Mm,
for me because it saved us in a couple of occasions. And Ashwin's bowling. So, like I said, it's the three
yeah,
spinners for me. But
yeah.
I don't have a specific. What is
So
yours?
I have a passage of play where I think if we were 139 for 7 in Delhi and Australia had a first inning score of 263. And I think that passage of play, that hour and 15, 20, hour and a half, that partnership between Ashwin and Akshar, if
Yeah,
we'd been bowled out for 180, we are talking about a different series
yeah,
altogether.
hundred
We're
percent.
talking about a 2-1 scoreline, but to Australia. And so for me, that, and of course, then the Indian spinners did their thing and we chased down the 117 runs. But without coming up to parity on the Delhi track, we had no chance. That for me was a magnificent comeback. And for me, that is where the series was won and lost, actually, because it's that fine margin that yeah. And I think we've got somebody agreeing in that in the comments as well with that. But
No,
I
you're
think that was the
absolutely.
passage of play that I felt really, and the six,
Yeah,
and then the 8 for 28 that followed, which is kind of
yeah.
inevitable.
No, but you're absolutely right, and that's why I recall Akshar's batting, because I remember there were like a
Mm.
70 odd and an 80 odd or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
where he got us
84. He
out
got
of it.
84 in that game. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, because we got it within one run
Mm.
of Australia's total, and that changed the game totally. So
And KL Rahul wiped
absolutely,
out the
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 one run
deficit.
deficit.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
because he basically came out there, hit one run, and then got out. So the
oh yeah,
scores were
wiped out
level.
the first innings lead, guys. Don't
I
worry.
mean, yeah, that's what he's done. He's wiped out the first innings lead.
Yeah, shit. Intense. Okay, no, I think that's more than enough about the BGT 2023, man. An exciting series, probably a fair result. Way off the mark with our predictions on the 4-0, but we're happy about that, I guess. It was a competitive series other than the last test match. Glad to see King Kohli back in form. Glad to see the Prince kind of claiming his spot. Um, Varun, there's some white ball stuff coming up now, and of course, it's a one-day World Cup year, right? Um, what's going to go on with that? We're going to have some personnel changes. Are we going to rest some of our players? Are Kohli, Rohit going to play that? What are there any omissions? I'm sure there was a squad release some time back, which I've totally forgotten about.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm going to try and pull it up very quickly. But I mean, I do know that the Australia ODI squad has reached India, where I saw images of like Mitch Marsh. I'm not even sure
I've
if
forgotten about Mitch
Maxwell
Marsh.
Maxwell
Maxi to
is back.
injured hai. I think Maxi's still injured, no?
Okay, still
Or he was in
injured.
the
So
net, maybe pata nahi, I don't know.
yeah, so I know Australia has made it, but I think all right. So I've pulled it up. India's ODI squad. So you have Rohit Sharma, you have Gill,
Mm, mm.
Kohli, Iyer, Sky.
But Ayer's
Um,
back. What do we do
yeah,
with that?
Ayers, and I also remember IPL's coming up, right, guys? So a lot of these, like Ayers, a captain, right? So he may not risk that in the ODI series.
Mm,
Then you got KL Rahul, Kishan, Pandya, Jaddu, Kuldeep, Washington, Chahal, Shami, and Siraj. I think
mm.
that is it. I mean, I'm probably missing a couple of guys, but I tried to quickly pull this up. Um, so no immediate kind of surprises there. I think I think the good news for me is if Iyer doesn't play, you're going to see Sky get time, and I think that is very important because India's kind of decided KL Rahul is our number five, right? And
Mm.
so and keeper, if I'm not mistaken. So I think Sky
Kishan
at
might keep if
four.
he opens. But that
If you
keeps
but
Gill out.
Gill,
Yeah.
you're not gonna keep Gill out, especially in this form, man.
Uh, okay.
So yeah, so
Are you
I mean,
excited
yeah,
about the ODI series coming up?
I'm not
Tell the
really, man.
truth.
I'm traveling next week, so I think there's one on Friday. So I think I will watch like parts of that, but beyond that, I'm not that
So you're
excited.
going to leave me to do the podcast by myself since I don't know whether Ashwin will even join me for an ODI because he's like,
I'm
this is
sure you will.
nonsense.
I'm sure you will. I mean, Ashwin's done a podcast on his own, right? So
Yeah, that was intense. That was
yeah,
insane. But anyway, what else is happening? WPL is going on. Mumbai is thrashing everyone. Delhi currently second place, and they look pretty good. Jemmy's got some awesome social media stuff going on. I think she was singing the Road Macha song the other day, which
yeah.
was I think honestly like the Delhi Capitals will win this. I know Mumbai is doing pretty well right now, but it's what happens to
I, I,
sorry, what we say?
I was gonna say, man, Shifali Verma is doing so well. The problem is players like Shifali Verma. If you just have a bad day in the final, the momentum just changes, right, for the Delhi Capitals.
Mm.
But yeah, I really like the Delhi
Or
team.
if you have a really good day in the final.
Yeah, that of course. But how often does that happen? I'm thinking of Virender Sehwag, right? How often does it happen that in a crucial game you perform really well? But I think the most fun thing about the women's IPL is that RCB have not
Oh,
won a game, and I think Smriti Mandhana is like, "What the hell is going on?" Like,
but yeah, that was really sad. I mean, she started off saying, I think she went on record saying, "I want to do for this franchise what Virat Kohli has done for RCB."
yeah,
I
so she's
think
doing exactly that.
it started from there and went downhill because I mean, in theory, that's not a bad team. You've got like Elise Perry, who's probably the world's greatest all rounder. You've got other
Yeah.
like really good players in that team, and they just haven't managed to get going somehow. I just don't understand it. But yeah, RCB just doing RCB things. Hopefully for their fans who are probably pretty passionate about both the men's and women's teams. They should do well, man. It's kind of sad to see an Indian star like Smriti, who is the highest paid person in the WPL, right? Let's not forget that she picked up the biggest bid from RCB. So there, maybe she's feeling a bit of that pressure of that price tag as well, because these girls aren't used to that, right? They,
Yeah,
I
she
mean,
should.
they play BBL and stuff, but like, and I think they played some of the 100, but the scrutiny that comes with that multiple crore price tag, I think is different. Um, but yeah, let's see where that goes. Of course, we'll be backing the Delhi Capital girls to bring home the first ever Delhi Capitals trophy. I think they had an off day against Mumbai, to be fair, and that's the loss that they've had so far. So
Yeah, it's good
we'll,
to lose. It's good to lose right now in the finals. It's important to then come
you
back.
know why, right? क्योंकि हार के जीतने वाले को ही बाजीगर कहते हैं.
Yeah, exactly.
And on that note, I think that's as good a note as there ever was to conclude what's been a pretty fun episode, actually, talking about a draw. But in the larger context, there are much more fun things to talk about, right? Like the World Test Championship final. In the meantime, we will, of course, have these ODIs. Then we'll have, what is it, 18 weeks of the IPL or something like that, 20 weeks of the IPL.
Can't
And
wait.
then a one
70
off test
games.
match.
It's great. Like we're
Yeah.
busy till like June 11th, man. This is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be there for days 3 and 4. So if anybody is watching the World Test Championship final, I think I'm in the Peter May stand. So yeah, come and say hi. Uh, and that's the show this week, guys. I know it's getting late for Varun. So Varun, thank you for joining me. I know it's a bit of a time commitment. And so, guys, join us on every week we do this show. Join us on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button and that subscribe button so that you know when we're going live. And follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're at One Tip, One Hand. If you want to write to us, especially if you want to sponsor us, contact at onetiponehand.com is where you can send us an email, or you can send us emails shouting about KL Rahul, which we've got, or shouting about Virat Kohli, how we're partial to him and we fail to see his deficiencies as a human being, etc., etc. We get all of that in our inbox, and it's all read. Some of it is replied to, some of it goes to junk. But anyway, that is the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Signing off for the week, guys. Take care, and we will see you next week.